Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Creative Nomad Show. Guys, I am absolutely excited to talk messaging today. You guys all know that I did marketing for so many years, and I'm here today with Hersh Rephun, and he is the message therapist. He works with all kinds of huge brands. You guys are going to love him. Hersh, do me a favor, introduce yourself to these people.
Hey JP, so thank you for having me on. I am, as your host explained, the message therapist. I'm not a clinical therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist, but when you work with me, you kind of are in therapy because I'm listening to you talk about your brand and I'm hearing the way that your brand should really sound. And quite often I have worked with a lot of big brands, and quite often I work with individual brands, personal brands, small businesses, and the goal is always the same: to help you talk about your brand better. Everybody has an individual spark, I think, that sets them apart, and no two brands, no two businesses should ever sound alike. So that's kind of my mission: is to find that special voice that only you have.
Yeah, truly. I mean, what makes you different? What makes you really sing to the audience? What is your um I was gonna say brand. That's
Well,
what came to me.
what is
What is your
your
message?
vocabulary in a way, JP? It's like what when we from marketing, often we focus on the product and telling people what sets the product apart, but we don't necessarily think about how to live and breathe that and just communicate it in terms of our essence, how we talk about it. How it's not what I tell people, it's not who you say you are, it's who you are and how you say it. That's the thing, and a lot of us, and I've gone through it myself, don't know exactly who we are, and so we're kind of like, we got to find ourselves first. We got to know ourselves first, then we can brand and come up with all kinds of great campaigns and all that, but we need that core stuff.
Yeah, one of the things I work with my clients is actually going through who are you? Who are
Hmm.
you being? Who are you for the world? Who are you actually? What is your purpose? What does success look like to you? Not to, Hirsch or me, because our definitions of success are going to be completely different, and
Yeah,
once
that's
you have
right.
that dialed in, and I think that that's really complementary to what you're doing, because once you have that dialed in, you can have a message that is truly you and truly
Yeah.
believes in your belief system. So is that what it means to be selling the truth to you?
Yeah, that's selling the truth is also, again, goes back to this marketing idea. We're always going to be selling something. If it doesn't matter if I'm an author or a house painter, or I build bridges. I'm going to be selling myself to the world. I'm going to be presenting myself to the world. I might as well figure out the truth about myself, about my product, about what I'm doing, about my mission, my purpose. Why am I here? I might as well figure all that stuff out and sell that as effectively as I can. Because another thing that we've learned, that I have learned in business, is confidence is everything, and you're most confident in something you truly believe. And that is easier when you're not thinking, okay, what do they need to hear? What does the customer need to hear? What do I need to say to get them to buy? Why go through that? Why don't I be like, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I believe in. Is it something that can help you? I believe maybe it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. You have to believe in your product.
Sure.
It's one of the things that I think that a lot of companies forget. They
Yeah.
want to push, especially when you're dealing with corporations, not so much in small companies, because smaller companies, they kind of know who they are ish. You know,
Yeah.
they might know how to express it a lot of times, but they do kinda know who they are. But in in the larger corporations, when you're dealing with employees and when you're dealing with team, and how to actually push that to throughout your organization, you know?
That's a great point, JP, because what happens with in larger organizations is the larger they are, the more disconnect there tends to be between what they're telling the world about themselves and what their employees or team feel like is really happening. So a lot of times I work with HR companies or departments to help with retention because the communication is off. The
Mhm.
communication isn't there. And I believe that they need to integrate all their communications almost the way you would align a spine, you know, in that you want to make sure that the message down here, right here in the center, the owner, the CEO, whatever it may be, that's going to be informing everything from their support team to the people, let's say in the stock room or out in the field, sales reps out in the field. There sometimes is even a disconnect between an advertising campaign and what a sales rep says. And
Mhm.
you need to get all that stuff in alignment, and then you can push out that beautiful message to the world, and the people who work there will be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes, this is exactly who we are. Everybody in the company should know who you are and have it be the same exact thing.
Yeah. Do you think that sometimes there's a disconnect between, um, who they are and what they're who they're saying they are as a in lar especially with larger corporations?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you know why also that happens is because that changes and they don't realize it. They're like, there are strict rules about what colors you can use and what words you can use and all that stuff. But if it isn't accurate, it doesn't help because this is another thing about selling the truth. People are actually drawn to the truth. They just resist it sometimes. We don't like it, or we think we need to say something else. Like I said before, we think we need to tell people something, and so it all gets convoluted. So yeah, sometimes there's a disconnect. And I think not enough emphasis is put on that connection and that alignment. It's always about the sale, the numbers, the things. We don't realize that's all back here. That's all happening at the bottom of the process. And we're creating a disconnect that's affecting our sales. We just don't realize that the problem's way back here or in here.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feed that through an organization? I mean, even the smaller organizations. I work with a team right now. Um, I one of my clients is a trading company, and I work with them on some technical stuff. And even within the team, sometimes there's a disconnect. We have this new CMO, they're working on some stuff, and they're working with the CEO, and then we have a sales team that's been with us for a while, and then there's me, and all of us sometimes having that alignment. How does that really come together? How do you really push that even in a small team?
The trick, honestly, is to work what I do is to work individually with these departments. So in other words, if you called everybody together in the whole company, and let's say you had 1,000 employees, and you said, or even 100, and you called them all together and you said, this is the deal, we're all aligned, here's the thing. Well, the reason that doesn't work is because all those people, all those departments are different sensibilities. They're not a monolith, they're not all the same. So I'll work with like the C-suite and sit down with the C-suite, and I'll say, or I'll first work with the CEO. I'll first talk to the owner or founder or CEO. Then I'll work with the C-suite. Then I'll leave them, and then I'll go and work with the department heads or managers and talk to all, let's say 5 managers even. So then I'll talk to the managers. Then I'll talk to the individual departments. And that again is why this message therapy thing isn't just a kind of a cute term. It's really descriptive of how I work, because I'm sitting there with all these different departments and communicating to them the same message with a little bit of a different sensibility and a different touch. And I make very clear to the management, the leadership, that this is what I'm doing, so that when I leave, they'll have a brand voice guide that not only helps them talk to the consumer or the end user, but also talks to each department, so that there's communication going on when I leave, so that they're not left with, okay, where's Hersh? Go to Hersh, go tell shipping that we need this, this is a problem and we're having a miscommunication. No, the idea is to have better communication throughout. And all it and the key is not talking or the words, really. That's kind of a secret. The key is listening. The key is listening to everybody's voice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets challenging sometimes, you
Sure.
know. And so how do you really work through some of those challenges? Because, for instance, our sales team and our marketing team right now have been at loggerheads, like
Hmm.
literally absolutely loggerheads. And there's reasons for it. I totally understand where both sides are coming from. I know what's going on, like, but I'm kind of in the middle of this, right?
Yeah.
So how do you go in and diffuse some of that, keep the messaging, making sure the messaging is consistent and the brand is good, and making sure that people are all on the same page?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to do yourself. Like, for example, if I wanted to invite you into my company, you might be able to diffuse some tension simply because your perspective is different and the skin that you have in the game is different, and you're coming
Mhm.
to it from a outside point of view, and that's very important. And I haven't worked in house, like been an employee of a company for 20 years, and I loved working for the company that I worked for. They later became a client of mine, but I basically like separating myself from that fracas, from that tension. And when I come in and talk to people, I'm really doing that listening thing. It's one thing to calm down, when there's a conflict. It's another thing to really be productive and be problem solving. And so I think the first thing that I do is establish that I'm not here to fix anybody. I'm not here to like tell, well, you guys were wrong. You didn't listen. They're right. This one's a, I'm there to listen and to really pay attention to what's going on. And then the messaging skill comes in, because it's like, okay, here's where the messaging feels inconsistent for them. Here's why they're having a problem with this message or this plan or this structure. This is what you're not hearing and what they're not being heard, and vice versa. And so it feels like, in a way, being a mediator, but it's really not. I'm really training both people, both departments, to listen differently. And more fun, honestly, more fun and creativity goes into what I do. And it was always natural. I always did that. I always wanted to play, to go do, to do performances and do this and that. What I learned from doing stand-up comedy was that it wasn't enough for me to just get up and make people laugh. I wanted a purpose behind it. And even though comedians can certainly be like the last bastion of free speech in many ways, they're helping people in a lot of ways. But I feel like I like this. I like the one-on-one thing. I like the one to group thing where I'm actually hearing from a group. An audience in stand up doesn't, they, even their laughter is programmed in a sense, right? I'm
Yeah,
pushing on a literally on a funny bone. I'm like pushing a button that's going to make them laugh, make you laugh. But I'm not like asking you how you feel, right?
right.
Comedian could say to you, "How are you doing tonight?" And they're not really asking you; they're setting up a joke. You know, you don't want that many responses from an audience. You want just the laughing, and you want a little bit of discomfort. You want to pull that tension back, and then you want to release the punchline and release the tension. But it's not an interactive conversation, right?
Yeah.
So I think that I like the fact that it is interactive when I'm working with a client, and that engagement is what gets me excited.
Yeah, I think that it's amazing. A lot of marketing is about playing with emotion, whatever
Hmm.
emotion that is, and how has being a comedian helped you to better craft messaging for people so that they can manipulate those emotions? And I say manipulate in a like
In a
it is not a
positive
bad
way.
thing in a positive way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
manipulating. Look at
influence.
it this way. Look at it this way. If my child is uh, frustrated because I won't let them spend more time on their device, and I say, look, this is the reasons why I feel this way, but I'm manipulating their emotions about the device.
Mhm.
Now, kids can see through manipulation even more readily often than adults can. But the fact is, all I'm trying to do is recalibrate how they view it so that they'll say, "Oh, I didn't think of it that way. I didn't look at it that way. Here's why it's good for you. Here's why what I'm doing is not just about me being a jerk. Here's what's
Mhm.
good for you." I'm manipulating their position. I'm not manipulating them to do what I want for my own, ill-gotten, ill-conceived
Right.
purposes. So the thing that comedy taught me is that empathy is is really what comedians, number one, want, and what they're giving. So in other words, a really good comedian will make themselves often the butt of a joke, right? But the audience empathizes because the audience also feels like the butt of a joke. And when
Mhm.
the comedian is talking to the audience, if it's a really good comedian, they're probably not talking down to the audience. They're talking directly to the audience, and the audience is their people who understand what they're saying in a bit. So there's this mutual flow of empathy, which allows us to laugh at ourselves. Once you can laugh at yourself, now you have made it okay for the other person to share, not to make fun of you, because they don't need to do that anymore. They don't need to take you down. You just made yourself vulnerable. The natural reaction to a vulnerable person is to also be vulnerable. And so that's what it taught me, that give and take of vulnerability. Um, and that's what I think the biggest takeaway was.
Yeah, and it's so important. We have to really be able in our messaging and our to talk to number one our people, and number two to really start empathizing with them and having a way for them to connect with us so they
Yeah.
empathize with us too, and that's super super huge.
Yeah. I mean, how
So
many people in business are just really talking at the person that is working with them or for them, or vice versa. They're talking at somebody to get out what they want to say, and that dominates the exchange. And then when you're done, the person doesn't feel that great about how they got it out, and the other person doesn't feel great about hearing it, and everybody feels put upon. The idea is to take that away.
yeah, it's so huge, it's so huge.
Yeah.
you know so I hear you have a book coming out soon. What's that going to be about?
So we touched on that inadvertently. Selling the Truth is the title of the book. Um, and I didn't even know I was going to write a book, and I had the idea of selling the truth a while ago, and I ended up buying the URLs, sellingthetruthbook.com, and I was like, okay, well, now I have to write, now I have to write a book. But I thought about it in the sense that over yeah, sometimes you have to do that, take that step, and then be like, okay, well, do I
Uh-huh.
want to renew the URL? It's $40. I don't. So I so I about, probably about 7 years ago or whatever, I looked at the world in terms of confusion around the truth. Like, whatever your viewpoint is, politically, socially, it doesn't really matter. You're still struggling with an empirical notion of the truth, right? So some people
Mhm.
would say it's a post-truth environment. We live in a post-truth environment. What that means is that fact, I'm holding a phone, I'm holding an iPhone, I dropped it on the table, those are empirical facts. But we get lost in the stuff that's happening here, how we feel versus what's really happening, and that everything with both with technology and just sheer will can tend to be manipulated, to use that word in a different context, manipulated to suit ourselves. So we can listen to what we want to listen to, say what we want to say to people who want to hear what we believe, and never really brush up against another opinion or point of view. And so selling the
Mhm.
truth um, started with the notion that why don't we just why don't we to find the truths, first of all, what matters most is what we believe is important, not what we believe is true, right?
Mhm.
This person does this and this person does that, and it's not as important as what I really care about or want to do, right? But start with little truths that are empirical and do not need to be proved. Something like you stub your toe and you're like, okay, I stubbed my toe. That really happened. You know,
Mhm.
you start building a new standard for reality, for the truth, right?
Mhm.
And it's little. And I think that as we do that, we start to think, okay, now I'm going to go into my thoughts. What do I really think about something? And you start to take care with all these little things, little realities, little feelings, other people's feelings, little things. And you're just like a kid again, building your perception of what's important and what's real. And I took all of that and then applied it to branding and marketing
Mhm.
because that's my business. I started my podcast, Yes Brand, on the concept that, the yes and rule of improv, where
Yeah.
you say yes to someone says the Martians landed or some crazy thing, and you don't say no because that kills the scene. It's not funny after.
Mhm.
So you say, yeah, yeah, the Martians landed, and they each are a mile long. And it's like you're making up the story as you go. And I think with Yes Brand, it was the same. It was like we build the story based on what we know, what the client says about themselves, what the client tells me. It's all based on what the client feeds me, and I never throw away what they say because they were the originator
Mhm.
of their brand. I just translate, you know.
Great.
So that's what the selling the truth is. Let's re let's reconnect with what's real and what's important to us and build on that. And don't worry so much about what we don't believe or what we don't think is real or what we don't want to know or don't want to hear. Let's start with what we want to hear and want to believe, but we'll slowly, without that resistance, we'll slowly start to kind of be okay with things that we don't like because no
Yeah.
one's telling us we have to do it, we have to eat it, we have to swallow it. No, we don't have to. Let's just take a little at a time. We were honest about the stub toe. Now we can be honest about this thing, honest about that thing. Little steps.
Yeah. For me, I call that removing the drama, removing all
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah.
story, all the drama around it. I
Yeah.
stubbed my toe. Now,
Yeah.
did it hurt? It probably did. Okay. Does that mean that I'm a bad person? I'm stupid. I'm clumsy. The table jumped out at me. What, you
Right.
know, all the
Right.
rest of the story that goes along with that, right?
Yeah.
What,
My
what does it
wife
mean?
will my wife will always point out that if I stub my toe, everybody knows it. Like I'll scream, I'll shout out if I bang my head or stub my toe. I'm just one of those people. I verbalize pain and I've come in my mind it's not an exaggeration, it's a reaction. Now an exaggeration would be 10 minutes later to tell somebody what a big deal it was. But that little instinct that I
Yeah.
have in the beginning, that little reflex to scream is, that's it's funny, but that's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's honest. It's honest to
And
say, oh, I overreacted when I stubbed my toe, but that was a gut reaction. That's honest. You know, I didn't say, my toe came loose, but you know, I just reacted. Ah!
you it reminds me that you could always you can't control your first thought, right? You can't,
Yeah.
but you can control your second one.
Yep. And you can control how you decide to handle a situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You could do it with all kinds of drama. Now, oh my God, I stubbed my toe, and I jump around, and I, saying, oh, yeah, is one thing. Jumping around, crying, putting ice on it, and like sitting here
I
and
see
like,
you have a lot of experience.
I have played both these roles. I am
Yep.
not.
Yeah, well,
I am not sweet, pure, and innocent by any means necessary. But it's just about taking away that drama, I think. And I think that you do such a great way of doing that for a brand.
yeah.
Really being able to walk a brand through that is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. So, Hersh, tell people how to get in touch with you.
The best way to find me is to go to my website, which they can go to hershrepun.com, which you have up there on the screen. That's easy. If they can't remember that, or if they're not seeing it, or they can't remember it, Get Message Therapy is also good. It's the same website, but Get Message Therapy is what I tell people when they're not seeing it right in front of them. And hershrepun.com is a great way to find me. So that's where you'll find me. I'm on LinkedIn, and yeah, there you go. And one way or another, you can reach out for a for a free strategy session if you're interested in message therapy and how it might help your brand or your personal brand or your company. And that's how I'm found. All my podcasts are there, everything.
That's awesome, man. I am so excited. People needed to get in touch with him. I mean, you're basically doing for brands what I do for people. And it's
That's
so
great.
powerful.
Yeah.
And it's so important. So I love it. Hersh, thank you so much for being on the show today. Everyone at home, make sure you check out his website, and we'll be back next week. You guys are loved.
Thanks, JP.
Thank you for watching the Creative Nomad Show. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, check out creativenomadshow.com. There is also a link at the bottom if you are an awesome creator and would like to be a guest. Know that you are loved. Everyone here at the True Awesome Network asks you to please subscribe, like, comment, and spread awesome.